And we are live, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's Michael Henry Dunn with Nancy Hopkins on Radio 5G. We hope you're all doing well here on January 8th, by coincidence, Elvis Presley's birthday. And as we go into the new year, there are some pretty significant developments in terms of the consequences of the rollout being documented. One of the first things we're going to share with you this morning is an interview by Jason Leosatos from his YouTube show Outside the Box, an interview with a very qualified 5G researcher and environmental authority, Lena Pugh, on the new insights and revelations coming in. So, Nancy, did you have anything you wanted to comment about that, or are we just going to line it up and share with people? Essentially, it's about, as I understand it, before and after blood samples being taken, before 5G is switched on in a school, and afterwards, and the really appalling immediate effects that are happening, right?
Well, it wasn't even 5G. But we'll let them tell the story. It's 25 minutes, so we'll just play that, and then we'll talk about it. It's kind of scary, but it's something we all need to understand and know. So, you ready?
Yeah. Again, this is Jason Leosatos. Outside the Box is his YouTube show, interviewing
Lena Pugh.
Pugh.
P-U, yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, we're on planet Earth. We're in an emergency situation. 5G is coming in faster than you can think. Lena has done amazing work. One of the shocking things that I saw was she knows a teacher. They put a monitor on the teacher. Lena came, the teacher went into the school in the morning. Lena tested her blood, clear, beautiful blood. And then came out afterwards, tested the blood. It's like bits of mincemeat mashed to pieces. Now, Lena will tell you about this now. That's not just that lady having that in that short period of time. It's the children, every child. Barry Trow has been shouting the alarm about this for ages. Girls' ovaries are being destroyed, testicles, sperm. These children are being fried. We're going to talk about 5G and warn people of it as we go into the new year with people having 20/20 vision, perfect vision, watching what's going on now. It's a great year of consciousness revolution, in my opinion. So I'd like Lena to start with that about her friend, because that was the big shock for me. And then, of course, you can talk about the German scientists that were brought in who have put the safe levels, etc. But Lena, tell me, please, about that lady, because that's so shocking. People need to hear this, and they need to get their kids out of school and demand that Wi-Fi is turned into wires into modems now. This is shocking. It's terrible. Thank you, Lena, for your great work. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason, for bringing me onto your show. And I love all your guests. I've had such a good time perusing it. And anyways, I did have the privilege of befriending this teacher. And I've worked with a school trying to get them to get the Wi-Fi out for about a year. And this was before I even started the blood study. I already knew it was a very serious business to put a toxin, a genotoxin, into a classroom, and it's industrial strength. These device, the router or access point, whatever you call them, wireless access points, WAP, WAPs. They put them on the ceilings of every classroom, and they're supposed to connect to 300 laptops. Well, you have a classroom of probably 30 kids. So you've got all these frequencies, all these antennas, trying to connect to these wireless devices inside a classroom. And it's doing this whether you have a laptop running or not. And everyone thinks, Wi-Fi is low powered. It's not. And it's anything but. And then once you have the laptops connecting to the Wi-Fi is just a mess. And I'll tell you, Jason, this teacher does not use the laptops in her classroom, even though she told the school administrators, I do not want this in my classroom. I will not use it because I understand the effects. And I do not want to expose not just myself, but to my class, my students. If I can help it, I'll, I just, it's never, I've never needed it. We use wired computers. We have wired computers. And in fact, I like to control the students' use on these devices by just putting them in a room where it's relegated for computer use, and then bring them out of that room back into a classroom where there's eye contact. There's, I have complete control over the classroom behavior and their concentration. And I think her pedagogical method screams common sense. So anyways, so she basically was the blood study that I took from her and the dosimetry measurements, which is the RF levels broken down into all the exposures from all the devices in a graph form over time that she had worn for the whole day while she was in school, did not reflect any laptop use. All right, so the result of the blood was from no laptop use. It was purely from what was emitting inside the classroom. That was from the wireless access point up in her ceiling and the decked phone, and I believe her neighbor's, the adjacent classroom also was using a wireless computer and the students' cell phones. So those were all the things, and probably a smart meter somewhere. But those were basically the constant emitters that she was being exposed to, and that had nothing to do with laptops. Now, I would be really curious to see, just how devastating, well, I'm really not curious. I really don't want to see it. But if you had a classroom with full-on 30 emitting laptops going on at the same time, now what would that look like? In terms of the RF measurements in graph form, as well as the blood. I cannot imagine the blood being any worse than what hers displayed, honestly. And I've been looking at blood for over a year now, and it was not, it was the worst condition I've ever seen. It was beyond coagulation. It looked like flesh. The blood was so sticky, it wasn't just a rouleau in a two-dimensional coin stacking, but rather coin stacking on top of each other to the point where the blood was so coagulated that I couldn't press the slide cover. It wouldn't flatten down the blood. The blood was so sticky. The color was brown. It was brown, and the slip cover. I basically had to kind of barely touch it so that it would sit on top of the blood. And then when I shone the light through the blood, you could actually see the color of the blood. I've never seen that before either, because you usually see singular blood cells laying side by side, and even when you see it in rouleau form, it's still pretty much side by. It's still two-dimensional. That's what I'm trying to say. So when the light shines through it, it's still gray. It's not red. You won't get any of that color. So this was the first time I've ever seen where the blood was so thick that you could actually see the color of the blood on a slide. So I was so shocked about how consistently coagulated the blood was that I panned out of the image and looked at the blood from a different view, and it just looked like cauliflower. The whole blood looked like cauliflower. So, it took me a couple of minutes to be able to talk to the teacher because I was in pure shock. I knew what I was going to be seeing was going to really shock me even before I saw it. But to see it was still shocking because it was live. You know, this is basically live blood cells. And to kind of give you a backstory, I'm electrically sensitive, and I got into the blood study well before I took this teacher's blood, was because I felt blood is probably the easiest thing to look at. They are representative of what is happening to the rest of your cells. They're singular cells, and if you can see what's happening to your singular cells, you can imagine probably what it's happening to basically your entire body. Because every cell, excuse me, every blood cell circulates throughout your entire body. And it's gone through basically your entire body, and it's kind of a perfect reflection of what the rest of your body is, what is happening to it. And people say, oh, you know, certain wavelengths only reaches a certain depth. You know, your cell phone only goes a certain depth in your brain, into your head. You know, you see these graphs where it's really, really hot here, where your phone is, and then as it moves through your head, it gets, you know, not as hot, but, you know, frequencies are being picked up through your whole body. Your whole body is a resonating antenna. Your DNA speaks to your cells speak to each other, your tissue speaks to each other, your organs speak to each other, your whole body is an interconnected entity. And to just say that, oh yeah, this is only going to be affecting this part of the organ, I don't think so, you know, because, you know, you got other issues going on. I've been looking at the science for 6 years now, and I have the patience to really understand radio frequency, power, strength, as well as the delivery. So it's not just the power that we're looking at. We need to look at the delivery, the mechanism. You know, is it beamforming? Is it omnidirectional? Is it now it's phased arrays? You know, with the multiple, even more antennas because of the millimeter waves requiring this type of technology. I really don't call it technology. I just call it, you know, kill rays. Really, that's what it is. These are kill weapons. There's really a whole. You have to look at microwaves as a living entity, all of its own. It's not a technology. If you've ever seen microwaves in a visual form, these waveforms, they're alive. And one interesting thing I'll tell you, Jason, that I haven't shared yet in any, you know, of my written work, is that I did a test on a smart meter. I covered it. I actually snuck over to my neighbor's house and I covered it because it was beaming into my house. And I used my dosimeter, my meter that actually breaks apart the RFs and shows you in graph form what's being propagated. Well, my house, I have no wireless, and it's basically zero. It's no longer zero now because my neighbor's Wi-Fi routers are so strong, it's actually bleeding through a little bit. But anyways, this is at a time when my house was practically at zero RF levels. And after I covered my neighbor's meter, their meter went down to nothing for a couple of days. And then by the fourth or fifth day, I started feeling really, really ill, even more ill than before. And I thought, well, this is really odd. I covered the meter. I shouldn't be getting anything, you know, now. And so I took my dosimeter and I started measuring my house again. And not only was I not getting the frequency that meters are supposed to broadcast, it was broadcasting 3 different types of frequencies that it's never broadcasted before, and at a much greater strength. So I can tell you these smart meters and any meter or any antenna, cell tower, phone, whatever you have it, have an ability to change its frequency, change its tone, or change its voice, or change its speech pattern, so that it ensures that it's connecting. I actually have the RF graphs to make this comparison, but the before levels in my own home, and then after I cover the meter, and then a few days after, what happened to that meter. That meter just started spiking like crazy to try to get through, that meshed cover, that metal mesh cover that I put on there. There are a lot of things that I've discovered along the way that I actually haven't fully revealed or shared in all the research that I've done. The blood is one of them, and I have been asked by the Empower movement to write the wireless notice of liability, and since I've had other projects come in through the pipeline, I've had to leave. So as of now, I actually have a version of a notice of liability that pretty much is anti-wireless everything, including the 5G. Now, the reason why I even was willing I felt the notice of liability really is the answer. And it was something I was willing to put tons of time into because of what I had already known and found out prior to helping with the Empower movement at that time. This was back in 2018. 2017 was when Josh Del Sol asked me to come on board. And 2018, it took me 6 months to write the draft, which was mostly done. By then, I had already done the blood study on the teacher, and I have also discovered a clandestine operation that was happening in one of the schools using millimeter waves. It was 5G. It was a Wi-Fi chip, the 60 gigahertz, and it was a clandestine operation. I had to I was ready to go public with it, but I basically shut everything down, shut everybody down. I was in communication with 2 people. One of them went out with this information already, and I won't name the name, but if you do hear about this 60 gigahertz Y-gig connection, that research came from me. I did 6 months of research, and when I was tasked to look into the school where there were immediate electrosensitive issues happening, which I knew was electrosensitive issues because I'm electrosensitive, I knew immediately what was going on. And I knew it was millimeter wave related because I had already studied it for a couple months prior to hearing about the story. And I already studied 5G extensive enough that I knew that there was something going on that was very fishy. There's a lot of details behind the scenes that was going on with the people. I had made contact actually with a particular individual within that school where this was happening. The teachers were fainting. Several of them actually fell from fainting. And this, I can tell you, is linked to the oxygen molecules. Knowing that already just the normal Wi-Fi is enough to coagulate your blood and starve your entire body of oxygen, that the 60 gigahertz attenuates with the oxygen molecules, destroying the body's ability to absorb a deformed oxygen molecule. It's not only deformed, but it can possibly have changed into an ozone molecule, which is O3. Millimeter waves has that capability. Now, everyone says, oh, microwaves cannot harm you because it's non-ionizing. It doesn't knock off electrons. Well, yeah, it doesn't maybe knock off electrons within the atom. But what's missing is the fact that it modifies the molecules. And this is something that I don't know how so many people have missed. You know, the scientific community should be focusing on that instead of focusing on what the industry's storyline is. Their made up name, the non-ionizing, is completely irrelevant. It's an irrelevant label to call what microwaves can do. It should be labeled something that it does, not something that it doesn't do. So just as a really brief electromagnetic spectrum education here is, you know, you've got the sunlight, right? And then you from the infrared to the UV spectrum. After the UV is the gamma rays, you know, the X-rays, and then the infrared. Past that is the microwaves, the radio frequency waves. 5G's that entire spectrum is the entire spectrum of the microwaves within the radio frequency waves. 6G is between the microwaves and the infrared, and that's the terahertz waves. I mean, if we have time, I might briefly go into this, what 6G means. That's horrible news. That's something you don't even want to touch your body.
And that's happening already, right?
No, not that I know of. The terahertz waves is being studied, and I'll tell you that terahertz waves is being applied in a way that's not, as far as I know right now, it's not being used in cell tower antennas or close proximity antennas. It's more being used in devices, because what the terahertz waves can do is it can take a lot of biometric readings. It can do a lot. It's kind of a medical. It has medical implications, and it could pick up things that much more readily than what microwaves can do, and that's the whole reason why they're even allowing the terahertz waves to be used. Even though if you look at the FCC, there's nothing in there that says that they are allowed to license terahertz. In fact, there's nothing in the FCC website themselves that allow anything beyond 6 gigahertz, because there's no way to measure biological effects past 6 gigahertz. Because the waveforms are so fast that the distance from exposure will change the behavior of the waveform as it impacts that biological system. So there is no SAR method, for instance, and that's why the SAR method stops at 6 gigahertz. So when you're talking about millimeter waves is 30 to 300. So all the millimeter waves is completely out of line and unconscionably inaccessible on a regulatory level, meaning that the FCC legally really cannot license or allow the licensing of these frequencies. All these facts can be found on their website. it may be a little difficult to navigate, but it can be found. And actually, this is how I found out that also the FCC understands that the millimeter waves, they have a section that's specific to millimeter waves, and they actually know that there are certain parts of the frequencies that is perfect attenuation to water as well as the oxygen. And the water is between something like 23 to 28 gigahertz. And where do you find that? You find that in the driverless cars. And then the 60 gigahertz, which is a perfect attenuation of the oxygen molecule. And what is interesting is that the SCC doesn't, those are the unlicensed bands, which means it's free for all. And of course, who's going to pick that up but the commercial industry?
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm purposely not saying anything, Lena, because I
don't need to say anything. You can make can make your own educated guess as to why do they choose those to be unlicensed. There's something else that's also unlicensed. Do you know which frequency that one is, Jason?
What?
Do you know which one that one is?
No.
Your Wi-Fi, 2.45 gigahertz.
Right.
And what does that attenuate perfectly with?
I don't know. I'm so shocked with all this. I just feel like I'm blank.
It's a lot of information.
Go on, tell us what that's. Go on.
Water,
right? And we're made of water, right? Yeah.
Why do you think that? Why do you think I did the blood study? Blood is water. Blood flows in water. Blood is water. Plasma. What is plasma? The structured water in your body. So you're talking about 2.45 to 2.5 gigahertz being chosen as the frequency for Wi-Fi. And where is Wi-Fi? But in everyone's homes, in every school, in every restaurant now, in every store.
Well,
it is an unlicensed band.
Well.
So, yeah, scary stuff. You there, Michael? Oh, interesting. Why isn't Michael there?
Michael isn't there because he had his mute button on.
Okay.
So that Michael could finish eating his bagel while listening intently and not munching in everyone's ears. So, wow. Well, that was, like Jason was saying there, just to let everybody know, again, what we've been listening to. This was a really amazingly helpful YouTube from Jason Liosados and his Outside the Box YouTube channel. And we are going to be sharing that link with all of you.
It's actually an hour and 43 minutes, I think. So there's a lot more to it. We just took a clip of it.
Right, exactly. So we just that is so much mind-numbing information. It's like Jason says, he's not asking questions ever through the interview because the information she's sharing is so shocking that he can, barely find his words. And the fact that after such short exposure of one day by a healthy teacher whose blood is normal at the beginning of the day and is shockingly toxic by the end of the day, one day without using laptops. The laptops were there, but they weren't hooked up to the Wi-Fi. She had told the school administration, I don't need Wi-Fi. We have wired laptops. It allows me to control the flow of attention from the kids. It allows me to maintain control over my classroom. I do not need the Wi-Fi, and by the way, it's toxic. So even without hooking up all those laptops, the wireless antenna over her head on the roof of the classroom turned her blood to, as Lena Pugh described it, as a sticky, coagulated, toxic, nearly lifeless gunk, as she was describing it, that you could barely get the slide to press down on it. It was so sticky. And this is for a classroom that has maybe 30 children in it. And the antenna is emitting a signal powerful enough to power up 300 laptops.
No, 30.
No, she said 300. She said there's 30 kids, but the signal, they've got industrial strength, I think was the phrase she used. She said that these are industrial strength antennas that are amped up to be able to power 300 in this little classroom.
I'll have to look again because my brain might have just said, that can't be true, and discarded it because that's astounding. What I thought, well, okay, first off, let's get clear on this. This is not 5G. This is 4G densification, which means that everything that you're hearing on here, except for her, clandestine 5G putting it in there, is talking about the system that is already in place. And the vast majority of information regarding the dangers of these has come from 4G, not even densification, 4G. So we're way deep in being killed off by this stuff. Now, a few years ago, I don't remember exactly when, we found an RN who was doing blood work. She was working in like a health spa thing. And she was doing what Leah did, I believe, which was prick the finger and then take a smear on the slide. And then put a cap on top of that, which means another slide, essentially, and put it under an electronic microscope so you can see the cells. So when I heard that this was happening, we got this woman to do a test of the S4 sticker. So she actually pricked herself. She was the guinea pig. Now, she knows her own blood. This is what she's been doing for a living for quite a long time. And the reason she goes into these places is to tell people, to show people, how healthy are you based on what your blood looks like. And so she could tell different things. She had seen many versions of diseases that can be detected because the blood doesn't look right. There's something going wrong here. Very, very experienced at this. So she knows what her blood is. I think she said she was in her 50s. And so I wasn't there. I was monitoring through a cell phone. I wasn't actually at the facility. So she pricks her finger and puts the smear on the slide and puts it up there. After she had had a cell phone in her lap in the on position for 3 minutes. Okay? And what was being described, that stacking thing, okay, and it's like, all right, if you've got good blood, all the blood is sort of running around in, they're all single blood cells. You can see them; they're not sticking together or anything. If a toxin, and I've learned this from studying this particular video. So if you have all of these little ones all running around and they're nice and they got a deep color. I didn't understand. I think maybe her system wasn't as sensitive as Lynn's system, the one that did it for us. But we could see the color, okay? And you had it went from like pinks to sort of brownish. The different cells, blood cells. Okay, so what happened was that after she had done the cell phone test, okay, her blood got stacked. These blood cells, instead of being running around, they actually were stacked up. Like, it reminded me of those Ripples things, the things that come in the cans? Those potato chip things? You know what I'm talking about?
Right, yeah.
Exactly. That was exactly what they look like.
Bring those newfangled potato chips.
Right, exactly. That was exactly what it looked like. Now, what she said that happened was when the blood was essentially damaged, and it was a way of kind of protecting itself by doing the stacking thing. And then she was able to find one of the white blood cells. And this was so weird underneath the microscope because it was much bigger than the blood cells. And it was kind of like a fuzzy little thing. And white compared to that's why they call it white, but it was spinning around. And you would see one of the blood cells from a stack come down and get close enough to this that it was like being cleaned off. It was like an automatic duster thing, cleaning it off. And then the one cell would go and another one would replace it and being cleaned off by these white things, So when you think in terms of what she was describing this woman's blood looking like, it's freaky as crap. How was she even? No wonder they were fainting. I mean, I understand the oxygen thing. We'll get into that too. But, I mean, my God, how could you possibly even be thinking correctly when your blood's all crapped up like that?
And when you get to a level where teachers are actually fainting in schools because their blood is being starved of oxygen, okay, they're doing this rollout. And they're doing it, with the big propaganda campaign and your Verizon commercial on TV, the wonders of 5G and smart cities and the Internet of Things. Meantime, you got teachers fainting in school just from 4G. How?
Well, the fainting she described, I believe, was in that clandestine operation where they did put the 5G in there. But the fact of the matter is that if you're going to faint from this stuff, that's, like when it gets really, really bad, but you're not thinking correctly. How are these children thinking correctly? Remember, an adult has at least a thicker skull. These kids, their skulls are still growing. That's why a child should never have a cell phone. It's just stunning to me, first off, and why aren't these tests being done all over the place? Okay, if it's safe, then let's take the teachers, every teacher, check them, let's see what their blood looks like, and let's see what their blood looks like when we turn these on. Right then and there, everything would shut down. But let's look at... I'm sorry,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, just going to say, you're talking about the precautionary principle, which is well established in international law and all kinds of places, that is being deliberately and spectacularly ignored in the case of Wi-Fi because the profits are too big and the science is too clear. They can't afford to exercise the precautionary principle to say, okay, you want to roll out Wi-Fi, let's test it first to make sure it's not killing our kids. They know they cannot do that and do the rollout. So they're just steamrolling over the precautionary principle. And it is still, as far as I understand it, strongly established enough in international law and common practice, in all kinds of places at various levels of law and precedent and jurisprudence and all the rest of it, that you can invoke it and say, excuse me, this would be the precautionary principle where you don't subject, an entire generation of school children to a massive experiment as to whether or not this is going to kill them because we're just rolling out everywhere all at once. No, you're supposed to do just like you're describing, just like Lena has done here. And the results are so appalling and so obvious that the entire thing, should be shut down yesterday. So
it should never have been started up. But, I mean, when you're saying that the thing she was pointing out that was like freaky is the fact that, okay, the FCC, the Federal Communications people, the ones that oversee everything, were responsible for the frequency of what is radio, television, even radar, that spectrum of the electromagnetic energy field. Remember, we're just talking about a slice of that massive energy field. That was all they were given the mandate to oversee. And so these companies are essentially operating in frequencies that nobody, or maybe somebody does, but that are not being controlled by the FCC.
Right, they're unlicensed, she said.
Yeah. So, I mean, for heaven's sakes, I mean, we're all focused on, see, this is how they do it. We're all focused on the FCC being such a either totally ignorant operation or really very evil. Saying we're going to push this stuff. We know it kills you, but we're going to push it. We're going to push it, right? The people that are putting all this stuff in aren't being controlled by the FCC by law. So who is supposed to be in control?
Well, okay, I got two questions for you. First of all, for you, as a person with a military background, I seem to recall hearing at some point that there was a whole huge section, bandwidth, whatever you want to call it, of the Wi-Fi spectrum that was controlled by the Department of Defense, that was not available for commercial use. Am I remembering right? Is that part of why, would they be the ones who would technically be in control of this?
Well, that I should have tried to find out more about that. I remember that information coming out. And it was really, they were specifically talking about the Russians, because the Russian military had jurisdiction over the frequency that was 5G. Okay. And so I can't confirm that the Americans do, but that's what I suspect has it. Probably it's, state secret as to who's controlling, who's supposed to have, but that's what I'm saying. Who is supposed to be in charge of those different sectors? Because it's not just the higher, it's the lower. It's the things on the outside of this slice of the spectrum, that are being used. See, well, that gets into a lot of the science, and to be honest with you, I'm not completely straight on it now either. But you got, the sub-gigahertz things that Mark Steele is so concerned about. I can tell you that blood work done on people who are shungaited, in other words, they're wearing a pendant, they've got the Bucky Band-Aids, they're, surrounding themselves. You don't see that stacking.
Yeah.
Okay, because because you're being, you're everything is working right. You're being protected by all this shungite. And if you have any questions on that, boys and girls, go to Amazon and get yourself Shungite Reality, or go to cosmicreality.net, and if you get it through cosmicreality.net, you're going to get a stamp that's got Shungite ink on it, and you'll get a $10 it's worth $10 of an S4 sticker. The key to this whole kind of understanding of the science is that it's very, very complicated. And every time we think we've got a handle on it, they've gone and done something different. Like the 6G in the terahertz. I can't even say the word. I mean, it's like, what? What do you people? Yes, gigahertz, but, the thousands and, what is it? Trillions and trillions of, a trillion worth of gigahertz. That is astounding. I mean, it's like, what are you people doing? What are you thinking?
Well, when you're talking about the FCC, just briefly here, Nancy, that, are they aware of it, aware of the lethal consequences, and are just rolling it out anyway? Or no, and just to remind everybody, as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has pointed out, there are a number of agencies whose purpose is to monitor or police certain sectors, such as the FCC, which is supposed to, on behalf of public health, monitor, not so much public health because they're not actually health officials at all. It's obviously about various communications technologies. They are what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. calls captive agencies. In other words, they are run by executives from the industry that they're supposed to be policing. So the FCC, with the possibility of one lone person on the board, is made up of former big telecom executives. So when we get to the question of, are we demonizing these people? Oh, they are evil members of some cabal who are out on a big plot to depopulate humanity, sterilize our children, have, massive population disappearance while controlling us with, surveillance and weapons. Now, all of that is in 5G. But my own take about people like that who are in those positions, I'm not going to the place of demonizing these people. What I'm remembering is that famous quote from Upton Sinclair, which is that it's very difficult to convince a man of something if his livelihood depends upon his not being convinced of it. And, because of the profit motive, because of the world these folks live in, most of us are in denial about all this stuff going on. And if you've got a very high 6-figure, 7-figure salary, and you're totally tied in with all of, the influence and the power and the prestige, and, well, of course, we know we need to roll this out, and, well, there are some constitutional issues, but we need to steamroll over those, and it's all good, and, hey, I'll meet you on the golf course at 10 a.m., we'll talk about it, over caviar and cocktails. I mean, when you're living in that world, okay, let's, not be demonizing these folks, but, let's not be pretending that they have our interests at heart, or that they want to know about it, or that they're not going to do everything they can, as they have in the past, to prevent information from getting out there that's going to cause their stock values to go down. That's the bottom line. Anyway, just my 2 cents on that part.
Well, that's why I've said from the get-go in this show, we have got to give the people who are in the position that you've discussed an excuse for doing the right thing.
Right.
And that's what she got into a little bit about, finding these people. What was she calling it? The legal document that she's been working on.
Right. I pulled it up. We're gonna share that link with you. It's the notice of liability for public officials, and it's a really valuable tool that Lena helped very much to put in place, and we've got a international guide. This is from TakeBackYourPower.net. That's Josh Del Sol's organization, and it is about a legal notice of liability for your elected representatives. And over at TakeBackYourPower.net, they've got different links for if you're in Australia or Canada or Ireland, India, New Zealand, South Africa, UK, US, and a template that you can use. I'll just give you the opening paragraph. Dear blankety blank, you are my elected representative. This legal notice of liability is designed to be used as evidence in court if needed, and intends to enlighten you and to protect you from attracting civil and criminal liability in relation to your actions and or omissions surrounding the deployment of 5G technology within your constituency. 4G/LTE small cells form an integral part of 5G deployment. This 5G technology will cause me to be exposed to wireless, non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation against my consent and in my home. And it goes on from there. This is one of the powerful tools that are being rolled out. So I just wanted to give a quick heads up on what Nancy was talking about, and that Lena, who had also mentioned in this conversation here. I'm going to put this link up right now.
Thank you for that. We've got to push that because it's giving them the excuse. In other words, okay, you think that you're safe and you got your little political job. Well, I'm going to sue your ass, and it's going to come out of your pocket. Now, that's an excuse to pay attention to what I'm telling you and do the right thing. They need that excuse. I'm not trying to say that all these people are evil, just like you. We recognize that they're as victims as we are. You know, but right now it's like give them an excuse to do the right thing, because if they don't do the right thing, it could be a lot of drama in your life for the next, rest of your life.
Right, and then they can turn to their higher-ups or whoever their puppeteers are and say, look, the rollout's having problems. I've got a massive class action lawsuit with, hundreds of filings hitting my offices about my personal liability here, and this is actually jeopardizing not only my stock options, but my retirement plan. So maybe we need to, work in, go back to that fiber optic network that we rolled out that is completely safe, 10 times faster, and doesn't kill kids or, coagulate teachers' blood. Maybe we should go with that. Otherwise, I'm going to lose my estate.
That's it. Yeah. That well put. That's the way it is. So there are things that we can do. I'm trying to think of what else she said there, because it was. I do want to really listen to the rest of her presentation, but yesterday we had a guest on who was discussing the same subject, essentially, but again, just looking at the 4G stuff, and she was bringing out little gems of information that I can't quite recall, but we're going to have her on this show, by the way. Her name is Janice Churchill, and she's been doing this ability to look at the body from a metaphysical standpoint, or a neurology standpoint, let's put it that way. And they've got devices out there that they've been around for decades, but they're perfecting them now, where they can actually take bioelectromagnetic readings from your body, just as they do in these medical, all the different medical stuff they have to, you gotta have a CAT scan, you gotta have this. It's all electromagnetic. And they're doing it so that they can show somebody, we essentially would think of it as the aura, Michael. Okay? Yeah. So you got the picture of the aura, but not only that, now they're able to measure the stability and the functionality of your chakras, because lo and behold, when you're doing this kind of work with electromagnetic energy, you see the chakra fields. As metaphysicians, they told you they were there, but did they have a meter that would show it? Well, now they do. So they're able to also see, are your chakras looking right? Are they all in alignment? This type of a lot of information. And so she goes around and she tests people, shows people this, shows them what different things can happen to them based on, something as simple as hearing aids. She took, and I'll show these pictures. Well, I can't get. Oh, never mind. You'll see the pictures on the photo that we've got up for the YouTube. Okay, so she has this guy that's got these hearing aids in, and she takes a picture of him, and you can see around where this hearing aid is in the top part of his head that the auric, she calls it the life force field, is collapsed. The aura is collapsed in there. His chakras were all out of balance. I mean, there it is, electromagnetically, a visual picture of what's happening to him as a bioelectromagnetic being. And then she took just a drop of shungite and put it on each of the hearing aids, and boom, all of his chakras aligned, and he didn't have any of that burnout of his aura in the top part of his head.
Wow, I love that. And I know, we've covered this a lot, how you were very insistent about not telling people that shungite was going to protect you against 5G. Nevertheless, creating a Shungite environment, becoming a Shungite being, if you will, wearing a Shungite pendant, having Shungite, S4 stickers on all your devices, and drinking Shungite water, all this good stuff, creates an optimum level of energetic wellness, holistic wellness, of just bio-enhanced condition that we are willing to say, hey, if anything is going to be really a wise thing to do, it's going to be taking all these steps as we do all the 3D on the ground political action as well, of course, to stop the rollout.
Well, what it gives you the ability to fight the 4G environment we're in right now, so that your brain will open up and start thinking again, so that you can really understand what dire circumstances we are in, but what we can do to mitigate it. So, Shungite is incredibly important. It's getting more important every single day, and you can get Shungite any place, but please, spend the money, get the book, because if you get my book, which is based on, intensive research in just Shungite since 2014, but I was also an electronic warfare officer that goes back to the 70s, learned how dangerous these things were, and have been fighting it for all this time, 45 years of fighting this.
Right, and let me put in a plug for Nancy so she doesn't have to blow her own horn here in terms of Shungite. I mean, you can, Google Shungite, and there's, dozens of sources that come up, some good, some bad, some better than others. Just in terms of the integrity of the product, the quality, the research, the years of experience, that the products available at cosmicreality.net, at the Shungite Reality, through Nancy's work, it's as good as you can get anywhere. This is not a commercial operation we're doing here. Radio 5G is about waking us all up. Get it wherever you can, but get it. But I did want to put in that plug for the high integrity and quality of the Shungite and Shungite products that Nancy and her company has.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm basically obsessed by Shungite. I tell people if the subject doesn't have Shungite in it, I'm not interested in talking to you, because I think it is that critical to get us. I mean, I can tell you that I'm 71 years old, and ever since I've been in a Shungite environment, and yes, I probably have basically an optimum environment, my mind is clearer than it has been in 20 years. I'm faster. Yeah. I'm more able to I grab things and I go, where did that come from? How can I pull these things from, decades and decades of knowing this information? Where does it come from? It's because the fog is gone. Yeah. I mean, you don't even realize how amazing your own brain is, because for, especially young people, that's all they've known is the fog. My gosh, if you can just get over that fog, and Shungite will help you do that, you're going to find out that you're a very special person, and that your mind is a lot better than you ever thought it was. But they have kept you dumb and stupid by all of this stuff that they keep intensifying.
Yeah, it's going to be a beautiful day for a lot of these kids when, it's like somebody who was half blind or blind from birth, suddenly having an operation that restores their sight. They're like, oh, that's what colors are like. Oh, this is what it's like, to have a brain that isn't operating in a fog from EMF and Wi-Fi hitting you 9 ways from Sunday. So with that said, we are here at the top of the hour, and we're going to take our break here on Radio 5G with Michael Henry Dunn and Nancy Hopkins, joint project of Cosmic Reality Radio and the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution. And we'll hear some inspiring music and come back at you in about 5 minutes.
Okay, it's actually a little less than that, but I do want to say one thing. I'm going to tell you a Dylan story, because Dylan, I think, was 8 years old at the time this happened. A friend of mine's daughter had shungite pendants, and she had found, and she was the same age, had found a real difference in them. And he was her friend, so she gave him one of these. And that day, that afternoon when he got in the car, his mother said, "Did you have a nice day?" And he said, "Oh my God, it was such a beautiful day." He says, "I didn't get a headache." And she said, and she started to say, "What do you mean headache?" Because she had never heard him say that he had gotten a headache before. When he just kept babbling, and he said, "Look at this," and he's showing her the pendant, and he says, "This made me into a superhero." He said,
wow.
And what he was, then he explained that when he would have to go on these computers, he was getting these headaches. And, he'd never said anything to his mom before. But now he didn't have the headache, and it was just like, like this type of thing. Well, what also seemed to happen is that the kids, Dylan and Jordan, working with the computers, having shungite on them, did something to the computers just by them being there. Because all of a sudden, the other kids in the room are looking at them.
Huh.
And Jordan's very perceptive, and she said, and the kids just kept looking at us. And she says, "Mom, I think that somehow or another that shungite was affecting their computers too."
Yeah, it's that shungite field thing that's so mysterious and powerful and needs to be studied more. That's the magic that I get excited about.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that. So this is Natalie Rise, Generations Will Rise.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with Nancy Hopkins, and we are welcoming you to a new year that's, it's full of a lot of grim information like we had to share with you, but it's also full of hope and actions and information that we can share with you about how the 5G rollback is being effectively countered. And, we shared some really important information with you earlier in the first half of the show from Jason Leosatos from his YouTube channel, Outside the Box, an interview with Lena Poo, who is the environmental health consultant for the National Association for Children and Safe Technologies, and we'll be posting that link for all of you on the poster that goes out, and as well as the YouTube for our channel when it comes out. And in the wake of that, we'd like to move into solutions and start sharing with you a lot of the effective tools that are being used out there. People like Ray Broomhall from TakeBackYourPower.net, from ehtrust.org. These are some of the greater organizations out there that are making really significant impact in waking all of us up and in giving us the tools in our hands to, as it says, to take back our power. We have the right to protect our families and our world, our country, from this heedless, lethal rollout. So if this works for you, Nancy, I'd like to share with people a little bit more about a couple of really important things that were shared on the interview from TakeBackYourPower.net and a few of these other places. How's that feeling for you? Are you
well? Before we do this, I want to tell somebody. I want to tell our listeners, and you don't know this maybe, a situation that happened at least a week ago now. Mark Steele was on a radio program. It was a radio program, and I meant to look up the guy's name. I keep saying this. He's Israeli, I believe, and he's had Mark on a number of times. They really do good work. So he was doing a live program when all of a sudden he gets a blah, blah, blah. The police open up on the door. So he lets the police in, and what they had was a what do you call it? A search warrant, and what they were looking for was the LED street light that he had been given. Now, I did a show when you weren't here with Mark, and he explained this whole situation with this LED light because he had gone on a YouTube, and what you see is the light laying there, and then Mark, you can see his hands working, taking it apart and explaining as being the authorized, being the acknowledged expert in this subject by 2 judges in British courts, taking it apart and explaining why this can't possibly be anything just for a street light. Because you see the wire, this little wire going up and wiring, obviously, the LED strips. But then you've got these huge wires carrying, a huge amount of electricity. What is this powering? So then he follows it, and then he takes apart the antenna system, showing that this is something that has nothing to do with a street light, but that it has been incorporated into these street lights. And what does it do? It puts out a signal that allows it to essentially see through concrete and steel, to be able to look inside a home and to focus and target and use it as a direct energy weapon. Okay, so this is all on video. Well, this is what these police officers are looking for, is this LED light, this piece of equipment, because they said that he must be in possession of stolen property, because it must be a Gateshead LED light. Okay? And so that they were looking for it. Well, the story that we all knew, because Mark told us, was that he had gotten, I think it was an email, saying, please go to this apparently in Britain you can send a package to like a particular box, but that box can be used by anybody. I don't know what it is, but it was a box at the post office, I think. Well, Mark, sometimes I forget because I'm having a hard time understanding them, but they go down and they get this particular box, cardboard box, and here it's this LED lamp that he takes apart, does a video, packages up, takes it right back to the same place. So when the cops got there, it wasn't in his home. He had taken it in, done the analysis, and sent it back. But that's where they're taking, trying to shut Mark down, is to that level. So I just wanted to share that with people that, and Mark is funny. Mark and the guy that Mark didn't actually put that video up. I mean, I went in today to look to see, and then I got distracted because there's so many other things on his Facebook page. But what he's talking about here, the guy that was actually did the video, he had the clip of Mark being taped, because he was on live video, so it was on the tape thing. So they actually have Mark sitting there in the living room talking to these cops. So it's fascinating. But then the guy that had put this together, he went a little bonkers because he was like screaming, because they had already tried to shut him down, and he said, please, Mark and I want to be in front of a judge. Please, arrest us. It's gotten to that point. And so anyway, that's one of the backstories that are happening on the front lines of 5G. All of this, then today, this is what distracted me. He's on the street, and he's taken the film, and he says, look at that antenna. Now, he's trained us. So we know that we're seeing the exact same LED antenna that he took apart on video, but it doesn't have this little protrusion sticking up off the top. And he said, see, they took it off of there. They claimed that those things are integral to the LED light. He said, but look at that one right there. You see, it's not there, is it? And then he flashes around and he shows the other lights on the street that all have this little protrusion, right? And he says, if this was true, if it was true that this was integral to the LED light, it's not there. So therefore, the LED light should not come on. And he says, let's just wait a little bit. And almost immediately that light came on. Because it was dusk. So, you know, when I first started talking 5G and I was talking this is a weapon system, people left me in droves. Crazy. She must be crazy, right?
Yeah.
No. This is real. And if it wasn't real, why are they trying to arrest Mark?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, the over-the-top thing. Okay, we've got 2 police officers come to a man's home. They've got nothing better to do than to investigate a possible case of a petty thief. As a petty thief, he's apparently stolen an LED lamp. We have to send 2 officers over and find that lamp. Because he's gone on YouTube describing the lethal capacities of what's inside this. I mean, if we want any confirmation that the local authorities, quite possibly at the behest of their higher-ups, who have higher-ups above their higher-ups, are going, we need to shut this guy down. Look, you know, he can't be having that LED lamp. Let's go arrest him for petty theft. Right? You know, that this amount of attention is being put on one missing LED lamp for real. Okay. And I love it that the guys walk in and put themselves on camera in the middle of a taping.
They were girls. Perfect. They were girls.
Oh, they were women. Oh.
Even better.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that's got to be, I mean, you can do a Saturday Night Live sketch right there, you know, on that scene. That's outrageous. Wow. Well, God bless Mark Steele.
So I just wanted to share that with people that, you know, but you know, this is, it demonstrates a few things. It demonstrates that, even those on the front line are willing to do it through the court systems. You know, nobody's screaming, let's go to the streets. But the guy that did the video, he is on the verge of screaming, let's go to the streets. Because those people over there, I say they're on the front lines, they are definitely on the front lines because they've got children being affected.
Yeah,
and,
that's...
You know, so this has gotten very personal for a lot of people over there. And what is the response of the establishment? They do something as stupid as, you know, weeks after he has made the video, weeks after it was in his you know, hands. And I know that on my show he said no, he sent it back. Aren't they, you know, I mean, I'm sure he said it on other shows. You know, they're not looking at this, but they're doing this crazy stuff. And don't they realize the man is always on the computer and he has recording capabilities?
Yeah. Now, let me understand, just so I understand. So the LED street lamp that we're talking about that arrived at this box in the UK, he used it, did the show, explained, you know, how it wasn't what it pretended to be, and then sent it back. I mean, where did it come from?
Well, he doesn't know. It was anonymous. See, you know, okay. and when he's on the show with me, and he says to me, okay, so I got this email, and they said go pick up this box, and I think he said something about, you know, behind the bushes or something. So there might be 2 stories, you know. Right. And I suspect it was behind some bushes myself, and that the story of they picked it up at the post office thing. I don't know. It just there's 2 stories, and maybe the other guy got it wrong. I mean, but I heard Mark say something about bushes, and I'm going like, Mark, you actually went down there and on him. I mean, like, and he was laughing, you know, because it's Mark. And so then, and he said, you know, and then I sent it back. So he says, I don't know who it was. He said, I did the video, I sent it back.
Okay, so he sent it back to some anonymous post office box or something.
Right, exactly. It's some kind of a drop box that they have in post offices in Britain.
Wow.
It's okay. You know, you
well, technically, technically the officers who showed up could have gotten him for possession of stolen property if he still had it.
That's exactly what they were intending to do. But of course he didn't have it. So, Mark's, he's got an interesting life.
Yeah, that he does. Wow, well, God bless him and keep him. All right, well, with that, we'd like to move into sharing some really important, really useful information for those of you out there who want to know, okay, well, this is all alarming. What can I do? Because we are not into just scaremongering, fear-mongering here. We're about hope and action, because we believe this not only can be turned around, but it is being turned around. And we believe that Gaia, the spirit of the earth, working hand in hand with all of us, can turn this around. So we've got a couple of different things to share with you here. You'll see the link on the YouTube if you're listening to this later on YouTube. But we're also going to be sharing it up front from takebackyourpower.net. They've got some wonderful tools, and the 5G Action International Guide for emailing your elected representatives a notice of liability. And essentially, this is a very powerful legal tool that, as Nancy said, can give your elected representatives, your local county commissioners, or even way up to the FCC level, give these folks an excuse to do the right thing, because they are now personally liable. This is a legal notice of their liability. I read some of it earlier, and if this works for you, Nancy, we can just go through, read this, and comment on it as we go along.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. Again, this is from takebackyourpower.net, and we have the link here for you. So, a step-by-step guide, and they have links for whether you're in Australia, Canada, Ireland, India, New Zealand, South Africa, UK, or US. The template notice has been verified as being applicable in the countries listed above. We are verifying that other countries are supported, and they will add them here. They're talking about takebackyourpower.net. So, this is about copying and pasting this into an email that you can send, or if you want, do it by letter via certified mail. And you say, dear whomever, dear Nancy Pelosi, dear Tulsi Gabbard, whoever your representative is, right? You are my elected representative. This legal notice of liability is designed to be used as evidence in court if needed, and intends to enlighten you and to protect you from attracting civil and criminal liability in relation to your actions and or omissions surrounding the deployment of 5G technology within your constituency. So I like that, the language of that opening sentence. Okay, this is not a threat. This is intended to enlighten you and to protect you. It's like we're saying, hey, we know you're a good human being, and we know you want to be reelected, and we also know that you don't want to lose your house or your assets, or even be subject to criminal penalties for allowing this damage to be done. So we're not demonizing these folks. We're trying to protect them. It says, this 5G technology will cause me to be exposed to wireless, non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation against my consent and in my home. Contamination of my home with 5G may cause damage to my home if it becomes a health risk to me, and thus render my home uninhabitable. Irradiating me with wireless, non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation against my consent would be an application of force against my person, and which causes fear of bodily injury, and could be classified as a civil trespass and or a criminal assault. And again, this goes again to Raymond Broomhall over in Australia, who has been using the classic criminal definition of assault for the step-by-step process that they are using, and they have successfully used to actually take down small cell towers and stop the process of erecting hundreds of others.
Michael, I just have to correct you on that. You said criminal. It's actually civil. Remember, we were corrected by his one of his.
Thank you for that, Nancy. Yeah. So it is about civil liability, not a criminal charge.
Correct.
Going on with our reading from the TakeBackYourPower.net document here. Any level of exposure of man-made, non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation can be diagnosed by my medical practitioner as an adverse health effect pursuant to the World Health Organization's International Classification of Diseases, CD-10, code W90, thus rendering any safety limit as set by the government safety standards obsolete as to protecting my health. So just, let's go back over what does that mean. That this exposure of radiation can be diagnosed by your doctor as an adverse health effect, and that's pursuant to the World Health Organization's definition. In other words, meaning, hey, whatever, bogus safety standard that the FCC got you to set, which is hundreds of times higher for exposure than what the rest of the world uses, that's obsolete as to protecting my health. As needed, I may see my doctor for advice on the 5G issue. If 5G is deployed within your constituency, I expect that you, as my elected representative, will exercise due diligence to certify that all parties deploying 5G technologies have sufficient insurance cover to compensate for damage or harm caused by the emission of wireless non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation. Please note that this could be a problem, since underwriters such as Lloyd's of London do not insure for such harm and damage. And I can imagine this is going to be a big wake-up call for a lot of these folks.
I love that part of it. I mean, because what they're saying is that we're demanding you have the insurance, and we know you can't get it because no insurance company will cover you.
Right.
It's exception 32, I believe, in Lloyd's documents.
Right.
And this exception, just so people understand, it's not accepting, it's not saying you can't have insurance for 4G. It's saying you can't have any insurance coverage for anything that has to do with damage from an RF EM Wi-Fi signal. Anything, including your cell phone.
Right. And just so everybody knows, Lloyd's of London is used as the standard by the whole industry. And so what this section of the legal notice of liability is saying here is that, look, if local telecom company puts this in, use my elected representative, don't do due diligence to ensure that all the parties who are doing this have insurance coverage, and then my kids get harmed, and then I sue the local telecom company, well, guess what? They have no coverage. They're just going to be bankrupted by this if we win this case, because they can't just pass it on to the insurance company, because the standard insurer, Lloyd's of London, has ruled out covering anything. And just think, now, why would they rule out covering any damage from EMF and Wi-Fi if it was perfectly safe, like they've been telling us all this time? That's the other big wake-up about this.
Well, the big wake-up to the politician is you don't have any insurance blanket to fall into. It's going to come to you.
Yeah. So you can't pass it on. It's going to be okay.
That's why we're giving you this excuse. You understand this now? That you can't get insurance, ma'am. You can't get insurance. And so if it turns out that I'm right and I'm going to get hurt by this, or my kids are, then legally it's going to fall to you. You don't have any insurance covering you for liability.
Yeah, and they say, well, let's see, my kid's medical bill for cancer is of several $100,000. How much equity do you have in your home, Ms. Elected Representative, since it's coming to you personally?
Yep.
That's the message here, which hopefully people are waking up to.
That's the excuse. That is the excuse.
They go, hey, look, Yeah, I'm sorry.
You say to the FCC and the telecommunications companies, well, if it's all this safe, why can't I get insurance? And if I can't get insurance, you're not getting in here.
Right. And it comes with this kind of pressure and this kind of giving them an excuse to do the right thing. That is the coin of the realm, as they say in politics, is the ability to put meaningful pressure on a representative to vote one way or the other. It reminds me of a story I heard about Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It's in the late 1930s. Hitler is instituting the final solution in Germany, and people are coming to Roosevelt and saying, look, we need you, to go public with this. We need you to put pressure, and we're not at war with Germany yet, that hasn't happened. And FDR's reply to these folks was, I understand, but what you need to do is to put sufficient public pressure on me so that I am forced to act and that I have an excuse to do the right thing. Because, he's dealing with all the other pressures that are coming on him as president, from various factions and what votes he can have and, how he can pass this bill or that. And he's talking to Churchill and trying, let me see if I can pull off the Lend-Lease Act to prop up my buddy Winston while not actually going to war with Germany just yet. He's going, look, people, yes, the plight of the Jewish people is of grave concern to me, but put pressure on me. Well, that's what this is about. This is about how do you put pressure that your elected representatives can turn to the FCC or turn to whatever, big donor thought they had them in their pocket and say, look, thanks for the donation to my political campaign, and I've been pushing your lobbying efforts for, 5G, but they're going to take my home, and kids are dying, and I'm sorry, we're actually going to roll this back. That's the potential impact of this, we hope. So here we go. I urge you, as my elected official, to act in the public interest by addressing the potential cumulative harms of densification, which is the crowding of small cells into a limited area to enable 5G, and then insisting that public safety regulatory authorities need to prove that such densification of 5G technology is safe, and that any deployment of 5G, artificial intelligence, and or the Internet of Things is regulated appropriately to ensure that the national security and the safety and privacy of the public and myself is not compromised. So there again, that goes to, I love the phrase that they're using the phrase national security. They're saying, okay, you can toss that phrase around anytime that you want to up the stock of the military-industrial complex with, whatever bogus war is getting promulgated at any one time. You can talk about national security, but as far as I'm concerned, national security has to do with our communities, our families, our schools, the brains and hearts of our children. That's where national security really rests, and the safety and privacy of the public, cannot be compromised in this way. So let's take back that phrase, national security. Reading on here from TakeBackYourPower.net's legal notice of liability. You, meaning they're addressing the elected official, this is a template letter that you can use. You need to protect the public from other harmful wireless technologies such as Wi-Fi in schools, smart meters on dwellings, and the like, and to replace those technologies with safe and efficient wired technologies such as Ethernet and fiber optics as the end nodes of internet delivery systems to dwellings, schools, and commercial buildings. Forward-thinking cities are already doing this. So again, this is addressing, the people say, hey, you people want us to go, to go back to snail mail and landlines, and sorry, you're just not catching up with the future. That's bogus. There is, a readily available alternative, and we're perfectly capable of making that happen. Going on here, I implore you, as my elected official, to act in the public interest by protecting the public and myself from being persecuted by the passing of laws that restrict the courts, law enforcement agencies, municipal councils, and local governments from taking action to protect the public from harm to health and damage caused by 5G and other wireless technologies. Whoop, excuse me. Got a little background noise. Beg your pardon there. I am genuinely concerned for your welfare, the general public, and mine, and this is a situation of the utmost urgency. I have studied the relevant facts and am thus aware of the danger. As a result, I am in fear, and I take the risk of harm and damage to me very seriously. And then they go on to share some links. To help bring you up to speed on this extremely important topic, please go to the5gsummit.com. And again, folks, this is from takebackyourpower.net. This is their legal notice of liability that we're reading from. Please go to the5gsummit.com and listen for free to what 40 highly regarded experts, inclusive of scientists, medical practitioners, and lawyers from around the world, have to say on the 5G subject. Experts who are not censored by the telecommunications industry, nor their captured governments, nor the captured media. Further, to assist with your education, please look at the Bio-Initiative Report 2012, a rationale for biologically based public exposure standards for electromagnetic fields, and that's at bioinitiative.org, and also Physicians for Safe Technology, 5G mobile communications at mdsafetech.org. MD is in medical doctor, safetech.org. I implore you, as my civic leader and as my elected representative, to get educated on this important topic and show me by your decisions, actions, and omissions that you are taking precautionary steps to address the risk of harm to me and all the people within your constituency. As an elected official, I believe you are at risk of being liable if you do not take appropriate action to attempt to abate or prevent such harm to me or the public. Your people are rising up, and I implore you to take leadership and be a champion for the health and safety of all of us. If you do, many voters, legislators, and I will wholeheartedly support and campaign for you. Sincerely, Michael Henry Dunn, or whomever it is that elects to use this excellent tool. So, again, this is from takebackyourpower.net. And Lena Pugh, who, as we just shared with you, was interviewed by Jason Leosados on his YouTube channel Outside the Box, helped to craft that really useful tool. So, any comments on that, Nancy?
I'm not sure I would add and campaign for you.
Oh. Yeah, well, you know, I'd love to see who out there, if in fact there is anybody out there in Congress specifically, who is taking action, who is standing up as a voice on this. What representatives actually are doing this, are heeding this legal notice of liability. You know, I would love to see, it would be a huge risk. You're not going to see, for example, any of the Democratic candidates for president bringing this up on a debate because, you know, their calculation within their campaign, they're going to say, look, let's bring up 5G later. All we're going to do is make ourselves a target for being called conspiracy theorists. And, you know, we're immediately, you know, our numbers are going to drop through the floor if we bring this up. But somebody's going to have the guts to do it sooner or later. Have you seen anything out there?
Not from any politicians. I mean, they're too busy trying to impeach the president.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's priority one, right? Never mind what's happening to your children.
We've got to really look at, you know, our priorities. It's like they're I mean, they keep dancing around and doing all this stuff up there and not talking about the things that are killing us. We are under attack. You know?
Yeah.
A domestic terrorist is attacking us. They go by
right.
corporate names, but that's what they are. And our government is busy running around on a bogus attempt to change the elections in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that thinks that that's not the real reason, well, you better get yourself a different source of information. Let me put it to you that way, because it's just too damn obvious. When they first started this thing about the Ukraine, myself and Walt Silva talked about it, and Dolly Howard, and we just, it was so ridiculous, the entire thing, and to watch it continue to grow into this bizarre thing that now the Congress is sitting there with the idea that they're not going to give it to the Senate until the Senate agrees to conduct the court case, essentially the court case. The way that the Congress it's like one insane thing after the other. It's just, so they distract us on this, and they don't listen. They don't want to listen. I kind of figure that these people up there, okay, this is the seat of the United States government. I suspect that the telecommunication systems there are the biggest and the best they can be, and I think they're all brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, we talk about this woman who is a teacher in a room where there's not even any laptops on, having that awful thing happen to her blood. And yet you think about these people that are living their lives inside a domed area that has got the most powerful electromagnetic frequencies available for their communications. What are they? What does their blood look like?
Right.
I'm not saying these people are evil. I think they're just a little insane, because I don't think that their brains are thinking anymore.
Well, they're certainly not, thinking clearly and independently enough to be able to buck the party line on either side. This is a straight partisan line vote. So, you follow the money, and it's who's, where do the campaign donations come from? Where does the lobbying come from? Who's trying to do what? And they're just in lockstep. The only one that I can see is Tulsi Gabbard voting present on the impeachment, the only Democrat to do so, rather than voting for it. And, she's getting vilified for that. But other than that, you've got...
Well, isn't she relatively a new congressperson?
Comparatively, but...
Well, see, she hasn't been in the 5G, 4G densification long enough to have her brain fried.
Well, she also bucked the DNC. She also called out the corruption on what happened to Bernie Sanders in the primaries in 2016. She also was pointing the finger at the corruption connected to the Clinton campaign in 2016. So she is definitely persona non grata as far as the DNC is concerned. She's also a veteran. She's
who took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah, exactly. So, if there's anybody on the Democratic side that, obviously, the chances of her winning the nomination are extremely long. But that's the kind of person that, if it came down to it, a fair number of Trump supporters could look at her profile and say, okay, this is somebody who actually is about the Constitution and the oath and some sensible governance. Who knows?
And what's her name again?
Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii. And I think you'd really like this lady, Nancy. She's very straight arrow, very common sense, very grounded. She's still doing her National Guard duty on weekends when as required during the campaign. And she's really smart and really well spoken, and there's no BS about her that I can see so far. Anyway, good luck to her. They're freezing her out as much as possible, and because she is exactly who the DNC does not want. So just like they did with Bernie, she's getting starved for attention. But in the wake of the debates, she got the biggest Google searches were on Tulsi because she lights people up. She does. Anyway, I don't want to get too political with this. So we'll see. When you look at the big geopolitical circus out there, and unfortunately, with what's happening in Iran, it's now just gotten several levels, more chaotic. And I'm just trying to stay focused on what's in front of me. God, we pray that obviously this thing doesn't escalate with Iran, but in the meantime, we've got to stay focused on what's in front of us, what's come to our hearts and minds as the action that we can take, the cause that we can embrace and say, all right, this is where I can make a difference. And we encourage everybody also to go to 5G-know.com. That's our website for Radio 5G. We have our own links there to share with you about actions you can take. And we have a lot of great links to various other great organizations out there, to environmentalhealthtrust.org, ehtrust.org, bioinitiative.org, the 5G Space Appeal. These are a lot of really effective organizations out there. We were touching earlier on the Ray Broomhall initiative, and I just want to share that with you. This is from We Say No to 5G in Australia.com. We're also going to pop that up on the screen here for you to be able to access, because just like with the legal notice of liability that we just shared with you from takebackyourpower.net, this is how this has been very powerfully rolled out in Australia by Ray Broomhall. This is a step-by-step action plan to apply the legal system, and it is essentially the same. This is Australia, but it has its roots in common law, and which is common to the UK, US, Australia, Canada, etc. And we very much encourage everybody to look at that. Let me read a little bit from this. It's a step-by-step action plan. Number 1, identify the source of the emission, identify the site, home, workplace, public transport, etc., and use the RFNSA website to do so. Gather support in your council area. Speak to your friends and neighbors. Do letterbox drops, informing neighbors. Knock on doors. Gather as much support as you can. Print out flyers, videos taken at the Stop 5G event, etc. And then this is really important. Essentially, folks, this is about obtaining medical opinions from qualified medical doctor. If you are fighting a group, then not everyone in the group needs a letter. The more letters you have, the better. This is essentially about for those who are already sick, who are already suffering from EHS or cancer or any symptoms. These letters could be used saying, for example, that, quote, based on the research that your doctor has done, he does not consider 5G to be safe for you. Or that, quote, in your doctor's opinion, according to current scientific peer-reviewed studies, such as the NTP study, the Bioinitiative report, and so forth, you have justified and reasonable grounds to be fearful that the 5G technology will be harmful. And they give some other examples of language that you could use. And if your doctor mentions symptoms or health issues or family histories of cancer, if applicable, that also helps support the letters that can use this strategy. You might have to supply your doctor with some information if he's unsure, but ideally there should be doctors, usually environmental and integrative doctors, who are aware already. And then they cite here Dr. Russell Cooper from down in Australia, who's willing to speak with particular doctors. Again, this is for Australia. So you speak with your town councillors, try to get them on board. Might be easier to go in small groups, right? Keep it polite and friendly. We don't want to go nuclear with these folks. Just approach them as your concerned constituency, your concerned neighbors. You want to make allies of them. Try to get them to understand the issues, that this is a legitimate cause for alarm. And you want to get readings for electromagnetic radiation emissions, get details of who installed them. Does the site require council approval? Collect all correspondence that you've had with the emitting company and the council. Again, I'm reading from a step-by-step process that's been put together by Ray Broomhall's organization in Australia about how to utilize the legal strategy of the civil liability under a definition of assault upon you in the safety of your home that puts you in fear of bodily injury, or that is actively causing harm, that allows you to cut through all the years-long process that you're going to have if you try to sue these companies personally. This is about a legal strategy that was developed by Raymond Broomhall in Australia to use the classic definition of assault to just put a stop to this. And they've been doing it very successfully. Hundreds of small cell towers have been taken down. Others that were in application process have been stopped. So then it's about
well, then the biggest telecommunications company in Australia has put a halt to 5G. And when the guy that was announcing it, one of the reporters, said something about, who's pushing this crazy idea that this is dangerous. And the guy said, I don't think it's crazy, to that effect. I'm misphrasing him. But let's talk about Australia for a moment, okay? Because one of the things that is happening, most people probably know about it, is the horrendous fires that are there, burning the country to the ground. Millions and millions of animals lost. Now, when I started doing some research into this, I kept getting, this is climate problem. This is what we can expect in the future because it's the climate, it's the climate, it's the climate. And I'm going, no, it isn't. Because we've covered this in a previous show too. And I think it might have been Dr. Paul that brought this information out. But apparently when you have a tree and you have electromagnetic, and of course the more you get, right? So let's say you've got a tree and it's in a high 4 densification situation. What's happening is that the tree is detecting the electromagnetic as a threat. And the threat mechanism that kicks in is that the tree begins to create it's not turpentine, but it's the chemical that turpentine is made from inside the tree. And that's to ward off pests, basically. But because it doesn't know what other mechanism does it have to protect, so it puts out this turpentine. This turpentine now is like an explosion waiting to happen. Because what? Turpentine burns. So when you've got a dry situation, as they have in the summertime, on top of that, you've got this entire area that it might have been being beamed with all of this electromagnetic energy that has filled the trees with turpentine. So that when a fire comes in, it's not only that they start on fire, but in many cases can explode. So, when you look at things that wouldn't seem to be connected to the electromagnetic situation we find ourselves in, think again. Because if you look at the videos and I looked at very few of them because I don't like to put energy into, any of this yuck. But what was very apparent was that, and what they were saying there, that they've never seen fires burning as hot. Well, you've never seen fires that are continually being fueled by turpentine. So I just wanted to push. Well, you mentioned Australia.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy. I was not aware of that. That's kind of mind-bending. And, you think about Australia. There's this wonderful movement going on there, stopping 5G. But, it's very much under the thumb of what we'll loosely refer to as the corrupt financial elite, military industrial complex, NATO war machine, etc., where, it's not, let's just say, there's a freedom struggle going on there, and the amount of bombardment that they've had with densification and what's, likely to have been happening to the plant life and the trees there is just, a huge wake-up call for the rest of us. And then you look at, geopolitically, what is it? What is the effect of it? I mean, it is such an appalling thing that's gone on there. 500 million animals. 500 million animals have perished in these fires, which are, is virtually the entire country. And it's a continent. We're talking a huge landmass, right? Have been incinerated. What's the effect of that? If you're pushing an agenda to get everybody to buy into, that the ultimate effect of climate change, which is real, climate change is real, is essentially that hot places are going to get hotter, cold places are going to get colder, and what's being ignored is the science indicating that when you get the ice caps melting, and the Greenland ice cap melting, and the Antarctic ice cap melting, and you have these inflows of cold water into, the various streams. And again, I'm not an oceanographer, I'm not a climate scientist, but there is ample evidence out there indicating that where we are in fact headed is towards a new ice age. And when you look at that, that's not getting any play, right? Because if you're trying to scare people, and if you're trying to line people up behind the idea of surrendering their sovereignty to a global organization that's going to protect you against these horrible things that are going on, that, we can't have, this country's interest and that country's interest getting in the way of protecting the human family. We need a carbon tax, and because we're all going to be fried within a decade or two. Well, climate change is real. There are.
Let me jump in here for a second, Michael, because we're running.
It's not a climate change denier here. I'm just saying, folks, just look at the political agenda. That's all I'm asking.
We're running out of time, and I wanted to point something out about Australia. The Aborigines, there is, and I don't have it in front of me, and you might even know it, that big, huge, it's the top of a volcano thing that's sitting in the middle of a desert. It's a very sacred place for the Aborigines.
Uh-huh.
Well, apparently, eons ago, they had a ceremony. It was some kind of a consecration ceremony that was interrupted. Now, I don't know anything more than that. But what's happened is the Aborigines are going to start the ceremony again, and this time, hopefully conclude it. And it's going to happen between the 12th and 13th of January. And what's interesting about this, well, there's a lot of things interesting, but what's kind of odd is that just last October, I believe, the mount was continually being, tourists were going there, and they would leave all sorts of trash, and, they were getting hurt and all, and the Aborigines finally were able to get enough support to shut down any tourists entering and climbing the rock. It's huge. It's amazing. It's an incredible picture. So on January 12th through 13th, supposedly this ceremony and this consecration has to do with, let's say, balancing the chakra systems of the earth. And they go through and they'll tell you, that each of these different places on the earth is the chakra for earth. But it's the entire grid system, 12, 13, something amazing is going to happen. And I don't get into this. This is the first time I've ever gone out there and said something about these 2 days. I keep getting these little, like breadcrumbs. This is important. This is important. So just be aware and, kind of like take the time from here to then to just analyze, which reality do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a 5G apocalypse one? Or do you want to live in one where it's the golden rule? And everybody does to others as they would have done unto themselves. And that we change all this crazy insanity. And it can be done in a heartbeat. And that's another story. But 12, 13 January, be prepared. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, Nancy. That's a heavy-duty astrological date as well. Jupiter is conjunct Pluto. If you go to pamgregory.com, an excellent English astrologer, she brings out a lot of the implications and energetics of this conjunction that is going to have huge effects for years. In the long run, beneficial, world-changing, new paradigm stuff. As Mae West said, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Maybe it was Betty
we
Days.
talked about this on Say What Show, the last Say What Show we did. It's already up on YouTube. And I highly recommend that you listen to that because it's the only place I know that had a little bit more depth of information came out because of the people that were talking about it. So anyway, we need to end this show.
We got to wrap up. Let me just mention, too, that our friend in Crestone, Colorado, Reverend Maya Nartumid, has done a lot of work on the chakra system for the planet and how that is being activated and brought online. Let's hope that all these realities, metaphysical, geopolitical, local tools, staying shungified, we'll get through, folks. Thanks for listening to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with Nancy Hopkins. We're a joint project of Cosmic Reality Radio and the Sacred Academy of Global Evolution. So thanks for tuning in, and until next time, God bless us, everyone. Bye for now, folks.
Thank you for listening. May it be.
Let it